Good evening and welcome to Sun Middle Temple. We are so happy you've joined us. My name is Alba and I use she, her pronouns. This is our second February observance and I'm so happy you are here. As always, this service is recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel. Please keep alert for any upcoming projects as well as our ongoing Wax Museum, Pentagram projects, and audiobook sign up. We'll open today with our opening words which will appear on the slide behind you. Please listen as I read the words aloud or read them aloud along with me. We welcome you into the light of the gods and light this flame in celebration. May its brightness symbolize our connection to the gods and the natural world. May you join us in this community of faith, cherishing love and with open hearts. So our theme for this month is once again a repeat of Order and Chaos, and we are doing Plato's Republic today, translated by Benjamin Jowett. Just Plato's Republic, because I picked a long section. Then the good and wise judge whom we are seeking is not this man, but the other. For vice cannot know virtue too, but a virtuous nature educated by time will acquire a knowledge both of virtue and vice. The virtuous and the not vicious man has wisdom, in my opinion, and in mine also. This is the sort of medicine, and this is the sort of law which you will sanction in your state. They will minister to better natures, giving health of both soul and body. But those who are diseased in their bodies, they will leave to die, and the corrupt and incurable souls, they will put an end to themselves. That is clearly the best for both the patients and for the state. And thus our youth, having been educated only in simple music, which, as we said, inspires temperance, will be reluctant to go to law, clearly. And the musician who, keeping to the same track, is content to practice the simple gymnastic, will have nothing to do with medicine unless in some extreme cases. That I quite believe. The exercises and tolls which he undergoes are intended to stimulate the spirited element of his nature and not to increase his strength. He will not, like common athletes, use exercise and regime to develop his muscles. Very right, he said. Neither are the two arts of music and gymnastic really designed, as often supposed, the one for the training of the soul, the other for the training of the body. Then what is the real objective of them? I believe, I said, that the teachers of both have in view chiefly the improvement of the soul. How can that be? He asked. Did you never observe, I said, the effect on the mind itself of exclusive devotion to gymnastic, or the opposite effect of an exclusive devotion to music? In what way shown? He said. The one producing a temper of hardness and ferocity, the other of softness and effeminacy, I replied. Yes, he said, I am quite aware that the mere athlete becomes too much of a savage and that the mere musician is melted and softened beyond what is good for him. Yet surely, I said, this ferocity only comes from spirit, which if rightly educated would give courage, but if too much intensified is liable to become hard and brutal. That I quite think. On the other hand, the philosopher will have the quality of gentleness. And this also, when too much indulged, will turn to softness, but if rightly educated, will be gentle and moderate. True. And in our opinion, the guardians ought to have both these qualities. Assuredly. And both should be in harmony, beyond question. The harmonious soul is both temperate and courageous. Yes, the inharmonious is cowardly and boorish. Very true. And when a man allows music to play upon him and to pour into his soul, through the funnel of his ears, those sweet and soft and melancholy airs of which we were now just speaking, and his whole life is passed in warbling and the lights of songs, in the first stage of the process, the passion or spirit which is in him is tempered like iron and made useful instead of brittle and useless. But if he carries on the softening and soothing process in the next stage, he begins to melt and waste, until he has wasted away his spirit and cut out the sinews of his soul, and he becomes a feeble warrior. Very true. If the element of spirit is naturally weak in him, the change is speedily accomplished. But if he have a good deal, then the power of music weakening the spirit renders him excitable. On the least provocation, he flames up at once and is speedily extinguished. Instead of having spirit, he grows irritable and passionate and is quite impractical. Exactly. And so in gymnastics, if a man takes violent exercise and is a great feeder, And the reverse of a student of music and psychology, at first the high condition of his body fills him with pride and spirit, and he becomes twice the man he was. Certainly. And what happens if he do nothing else and holds no converse with the muses, does not even that intelligence which there may be in him, having no taste of any sort of learning or inquiry, or thought or culture, grow feeble and dull and blind, his mind never waking up nor receiving nourishment, and the senses not being purged of their midst? True, he said. And if he ends up becoming a hater of philosophy, uncivilized, never using the weapon of persuasion, he is like a wild beast, all violence and fierceness, and knows no other way of dealing. And he lives in ignorance and evil conditions, and has no sense of propriety and grace. That is quite true, he said. And as there are two principles of human nature, one of the spirited, the other the philosophical, some God, as I should say, has given mankind two arts answering to them, and only indirectly to the soul and body, in order that these two principles, like the strings of an instrument, may be relaxed or drawn tighter until they are duly harmonized. That appears to be the intention. And he who mingles music with gymnastic in fairest proportions, and the best attempers them to the soul, may rightly be called the true musician and harmonist in a far higher sense than the tuner of the string. You are quite right, Socrates. And such a presiding genius will always be required in our state if the government is to last. Yes, he will be absolutely necessary. Such then are our principles of nurture and education. Where would be the use of going into further details about the dances of our citizens, or about hunting and coursing, their gymnastics and equestrian contexts? For all of these have a general principle, and having found that, we shall have no difficulty in discovering them. I dare say that there will be no difficulty. Very good, I said. Then what is the next question? Must we not ask who are to be rulers and who subjects? Certainly. There is no doubt that the elder must rule the younger. Clearly, and the best of these must rule, that is also clear. Now are not the best husbandmen those most devoted to husbandry? Yes, and as we are to have the best guardians for our city, they must not be those who have must they not be those who have the most character of guardians? Yes, and to this they ought to be wise and efficient, and have special care of the state. True, and a man will be most likely to care about that which he loves, to be sure, and he will be most likely to love that which he regards as having the same interest with himself, and that of which good or evil fortune is supposed by him at any time most to affect his own. Very true, he replied. Then there must be a selection. Let us note among the guardians those who in their whole life show the greatest eagerness to do what is for the good of their country, and the greatest repugnance to do what is against her interests. Those are the right men. And they will have to be watched over at every age in order that we may see whether they preserve their resolution, and never under the influence either of force or enchantment forget or cast off their sense of duty to the state. How cast off? He said. I will explain to you, I replied. A resolution may go out of a man's mind either with his will or against his will. With his will when he gets rid of a falsehood and learns better, against his will whenever he is deprived of truth. I understand, he said, the willing loss of a resolution. The meaning of the unwilling I have yet to learn. Why, I said, do you not see that men are unwillingly deprived of good and willingly of evil? It is not to have lost the truth and evil, and to possess the truth and good, and you would agree that to conceive things as they are is to possess the truth? Yes, he replied, I agree in your thinking that mankind are deprived of the truth against their will. And is not this involuntary deprivation caused either by theft, or force, or enchantment? Still, he replied, I do not understand you. I fear that I must have been talking darkly like tragedians. I only mean that some men are changed by persuasion and that others forget. Argument steals away the hearts of one class and the time of another, and this I call theft. Now you understand me? Yes. Those again who are forced, and those whom the violence of some pain or grief compels to change their opinion. Stand, he said, and you are quite right. And you would also acknowledge that the enchanted are those who change their minds by the softer influence of pleasure or the sterner influence of fear. Yes, he said, everything that deceives may be said to enchant. Therefore, I was now saying, we must inquire who are the best guardians of their own conviction that what they think the interest of the state is to be the rule of their lives. We must watch them from their youth upwards, and make them perform actions in which they are most likely to forget or be deceived. And he who remembers and is not deceived is to be selected, and he who fails the trial is to be rejected. That will be the way? Yes. And there should also be toils and pains and conflicts prescribed for them, in which they will be made to give further proof of the same qualities. Very right, he replied. And then, I said, we must try them with enchantments, that is, the third sort of test, and see what will be their behavior. Like those who take colts amid noise and tumult to see if they are of a timid nature, so must we take our youth amid terrors of some kind, and again pass them into pleasures, and prove them more thoroughly than gold is proved in the furnace, that we may discover where they are armed against enchantments, and of a noble bearing always, good guardians of themselves and of the music which they have learned, and retaining under all circumstances a rhythmical and harmonious nature, such as will be most serviceable to the individual and to the state. And he who at every stage, as boy and youth and in mature life, has come out of the trial victorious and pure, shall be appointed a ruler and guardian of the state. He shall be honored in life and death, and shall receive sepulchre and other memorials of honor, the greatest that we have to give. But him who fails we must reject. I'm inclined to think that this sort of way in which our rulers and guardians should be chosen and appointed. I speak generally and not with any pretension to exactness. And speaking generally, I agree with you, he said. And perhaps the word guardian in the fullest sense ought to be applied to this higher class only who preserve us against foreign enemies and maintain peace among our citizens at home, that the one may not have the will or others the power to harm us. The young men whom we before called guardians may be more properly designated auxiliaries and supporters of the principles of rulers. I agree with you, he said. How then may we devise one of these needful falsehoods of which we lately spoke? Just one royal lie which may deceive the rulers, that if be possible, and then rate the rest of the city. What sort of lie? Nothing new, I replied, only an old Phoenician tale, a law, of what has often occurred before now as in other places, as the poets say and have made the world believe, though not in our time. And I do not know whether such an event could ever happen again, or could now even be made probable if it did. How your words seem to hesitate on your lips. You will not wonder, I replied, at my hesitation when you have heard. Speak, he said, and fear not. Well then, I will speak, although I really know not how to look you in the face, or what words to utter the audacious fiction which I propose to communicate gradually first to the rulers, then to the soldiers, and lastly to the people. They are to be told that their youth was a dream, and that the education and training which they received from us, at appearance only, in reality during that time they were being formed and fed in the womb of the earth, where they themselves and their arms and the appurtenances were manufactured. When they were completed, the earth, their mother, sent them up, and so, their country being their mother and also their nurse, they are bound to advise for her good, and to defend her against attacks, and her citizens they are to regard as children of the earth and their own brothers. You had good reason, he said, to be ashamed of the lie which you were going to tell. True, I replied, but there is more coming. I have only told you half. Citizens, we shall say to them in our tale, you are brothers, yet God has framed you differently. Some of you have the power of command, and in composition of these he has mingled gold, wherefore also they have the greatest honor. Others he has made of silver to be auxiliaries. Others again, who are to be husbandmen and craftsmen, he has composed of brass and iron, and the species will generally preserve them the children. But as all are of the same original stock, a golden parent will sometimes have a silver son, or silver parent a golden son. And God proclaims as a first principle to the rulers, and above all else, that there is nothing which they should so anxiously guard, or of which they are to be such good guardians, as the purity of the race. They should observe what elements mingle in their offspring, for if the son of a golden or silver parent has an admixture of brass and iron, then nature orders a transposition of ranks, and the eye of the ruler must not be pitiful towards the child, because he has to descend in the scale and become a husbandman or an artisan. Just as there may be sons of artisans who, having the admixture of gold or silver in them, are raised to honor and to become guardians or auxiliaries. For an oracle says that when a man of brass or iron guards the state, it will be destroyed. Such is the tale. Is there any possibility of making our citizens believe in it? Not in the present generation, he replied. There is no way of accomplishing this. But their sons may be made to believe in the tale, and their sons' sons, and posterity after them. I see the difficulty, I replied, yet the fostering of such a belief will make them care more for the city and for one another. Enough, however, of the fiction which may now fly abroad upon wings of rumor while we arm our earthborn heroes and lead them forth under the command of their rulers. Let them look round and select a spot whence they can best suppress insurrection, if any prove refractory within, and also defend themselves against enemies, who like wolves may come down on the fold from without. Let them encamp, and when they have encamped, let them sacrifice to the proper gods and prepare their dwellings. Just so, he said, and their dwellings must be such as will shield them against the cold of winter and the heat of summer. I suppose that you mean houses, he replied. Yes, I said, but they must be the houses of soldiers and not of shopkeepers. What is the difference, he said. That I will endeavor to explain. To keep watchdogs who, from want of discipline or hunger or some evil habit or other, would turn upon the sheep and worry them, and behave not like dogs but wolves, would be a foul and monstrous thing in the shepherd. Truly monstrous, he said. And therefore every care must be taken that our auxiliaries, being stronger than our citizens, may not grow to be too much for them, and become savage tyrants instead of friends and allies. Yes, great care should be taken. And would not a really good education furnish the best safeguard? But they are well educated already, he replied. I cannot be so confident, my dear Glaucon, I said. I am much more certain that they ought to be, and that true education, whatever that may be, will have the greatest tendency to civilize and humanize them in their relations to one another and to those who are under their protection. Very true, he replied, and not only their education, but their habitations and all that belongs to them, should such as will neither impair their virtue as guardians, nor tempt them to prey upon the other citizens. Any man of sense must acknowledge that. He must. Then now let us consider what will be their way of life if we are to realize our idea of them. In the first place, none of them shall have any property beyond what is absolutely necessary. Neither should they have a private house or store closed against any one who has the mind to enter. Their provisions should only be such as are required by trained warriors who are men of temperance and courage. They should agree to receive from the citizens a fixed rate of pay, enough to meet the expenses of the year and no more, and they will go to mess and live like soldiers together in a camp. Gold and silver, we will tell them, that they have from God. The diviner metal is within them, and they have therefore no need of the dross which is currently among men, and ought not to pollute the divine by any such earthly admixture. For that commoner metal has been the source of many unholy deeds, but their own is undefiled. And they alone of all the citizens may not touch or handle silver or gold, or be under the same roof with them, or wear them, or drink from them. And this will be their salvation, and they will be the saviors of the state. But should they ever acquire homes or lands or moneys of their own, they will become housekeepers and husbandmen instead of guardians, enemies and tyrants instead of allies, with other citizens, hating and being hated, plotting and plotting against. They will pass their whole life in much greater terror of internal than external enemies, and the hour of ruin, both to themselves and to the rest of the state, will be at hand. For all which reasons may we not say that thus shall our state be ordered, and that these shall be the regulations appointed by us for guardians concerning their houses and all other matters. Yes, said Glaucon. Okay, so that is the end of our reading for today. And I want to bring it back to what we discussed last week, which was the I'm forgetting the name of the play. The Henrik Ibsen play, A Doll's House, where the house is entirely in order, but there is actually chaos brewing underneath because the order is not what the people are actually talking about. And that's what Socrates / Plato is talking about here, a heavily ordered state, where there is immense control over all elements. And a lot of this, and well, a lot of censorship. He also talks about in this book that they must get rid of all the myths because the myths teach bad things. Anyway, so a lot of this is what because we're talking about order and chaos. All of these were different sort of theories of order. Nora has her house in order last week in the plays The Dollhouse House, and Socrates slash Plato has this order of this society. But all of these, are constantly being confronted up against with chaos. And that's where you end up getting existentialist philosophies that you must acknowledge the chaos to be successful. Because all of these sort of things with Nora and with this civilization with the Guardians are heavily, immensely controlled. And a lot of these are what Camus would call philosophical suicide, because you are accepting a belief just to cover up and refuse to confront the chaos of what is actually happening. So that is all I had written down for our notes about this section. We will now move into the ritual portion of the observance, and I will play the video. We leave this offering for our gods to symbolize our connection and devotion. We gift this rock to symbolize the stability of the gods in our world. We gift this water to accept the flow of our lives. We welcome life and bless our offerings with oil to share our riches. We embrace our connection to each other and the world and celebrate our revival. Okay, we'll now move into the closing words, and I will read them aloud, and you can read them aloud along with me or listen as I read them. As we move out into the world, let us remember our community of faith. Cherish love and open your heart as you walk through life. Hold dear the light of the gods and our connection with the natural world. Go forth in celebration and carry the light of connection within your heart. So we'll now do coffee hour. You can raise your hand to speak, and I will turn off the recording.